that it is a pleasure for me to be here because, as Henrik has said, our role, Kronikgune's role, this is a research center in the Basque Country on chronicity and health services, is providing a kind of homogeneous strategy for implementation of good practices for Progress Plus joint action. But for me, it's very nice to be here because actually in the Basque Country we are also implementing good practices related with physical activity. So it's also very good for me to bring some learning to the Basque Country. So I will try to do a short presentation. I'm not trying to get it boring because it is more methodological presentation, not about promotion of health. So just to remind you, Kronikgune have developed a strategy for all implementers in the project. I think we have 22 good practices or regions that are going to implement kind of a good practice, a model, component, or whatever. So we have developed this guideline for the first part of the implementation, trying to help implementers to identify and analyze some factors that can influence the implementation process. And then we also have given or have tried to provide some tips and guidelines to elaborate the pilot action plans to all implementers. So this is just the schema of this strategy for the first part of the strategy. I'm not going to deepen in this strategy because everything is compiled in that document, but just to let you know that there are a kind of a set of techniques that the local implementation groups have to perform before they start with the implementation. And today what I'm trying to explain to implementers, to people from Italy, Lithuania, and maybe also from the Icelandic team, maybe this could be also interesting for them, how to apply the learning of the study visits to try to elaborate the pilot action plans. So just to let you know that we have developed two working documents. The first one is a kind of a battery of general recommendations for the study visit organizers, for the host. And then the second one is a template that you already have in that welcome pack for the implementers to try to gather information during the site visit. So the first one, the recommendations for the host, these suggestions try to have the study visit as effective as much effective as possible to refine, clarify, and complement the information of the good practice. These recommendations also try to organize a study visit that aims to reveal the potential enablers and barriers and successful experiences of the good practice, of the original good practice. Here the active flag, to strengthen the cooperation between donors and adopters, and of course to benefit from advice and support of the original good practice donors. I have to say that we prepared this battery of suggestions before checking the agenda of this site visit, and it was a fantastic news when I checked the agenda because all the sessions fit very well with these objectives. And I think that the information that we are going to receive during this day and a half are going to provide information for all the sections in the template. So that's a fantastic news. So then you have this for implementers, this template that aims to facilitate the structured data collection of the most relevant aspects of the original practice. Then all this information gathered will be very useful for the local implementation group when they are trying to elaborate their pilot action plan. The planning for implementing the good practice in the region. So, as I said, all this information will be very useful to apply during the performance of the techniques of the strategy. So here, very briefly, here in this table you have the list of the items of the template that you have in your hands. And we feel that information of all sections are useful for the first technique, which is the scope definition of the strategy. But especially some of them will be very useful. For example, for the scope definition, there is a template that tries to gather information about the problem or the challenge challenge that the good practice is tackling with, the general purpose of the intervention, which is the target population, and which are the most relevant aspects or elements of the good practice. So, you are collecting data in that template. We feel that some items, those in red, are those items that specifically will fit into the scope definition template. For example, the fourth item, description of the practice. The fifth one, level of intervention, national, regional, local, involved organizations and institutions, the target population, main objectives of the practice, and the central features of elements. Of course, you also will have pieces of information in the other text boxes, let's say, of the template. Then the local implementation group will analyze all the information collected here in Ireland, in your case, and will try to fill it in this template of the scope definition with their own characteristics. But of course, all the information and learning from the Irish good practice will be very, very useful. The second technique that implementers or the local implementation groups will perform will be the SWOT analysis. And we believe that, again, some items will especially fit into the SWOT analysis. It will be kind of inspiring information. For example, the sixth one, which is context, organizational model and governance, funding needs, staff effort needed, services needed to implement the practice, key facilitators and barriers of the implementation, and training needs. And I know that tomorrow we have heard something today, but tomorrow we will listen to many of these things. And for the third technique of the strategy, local implementation groups will have to define very well the actions they want to implement and key performance indicators to try to know how effective the implementation has been. So they will have to define those actions and those indicators, but I guess that some of the information that we are going to listen here in Ireland are going to be very useful when they are doing this exercise. For example, implementers will have to fill in these items, these sections, and the 14th one is strategies used for implementation. That will be very useful when they are trying to define the actions to be implemented. The 17th, how was ensured the sustainability of the practice, and the last one, which is the evaluation, how they have measured and assessed the effectiveness of the intervention. So just to finish, the instruments or tools implementers have is, as I said, that template to collect information in a structured way during this visit. Then with this learning at home, they will try with their local implementation group, try to fill it in the three techniques of the implementation strategy, the scope definition, the SWOT analysis, and the collaborative methodology. And in the end, this is by autumn, more or less, they will have to elaborate the pilot action plan, which is almost directly fed with the information included in these templates. So we believe that it is quite a straightforward process. Of course, maybe during this site visit you might have some doubts. Please ask me, and or maybe you will have some concerns once you are at home. So of course, Kronikgune is there for you to ask, and we will try to answer all your concerns and doubts. So if you have any question for now, we'll be happy to try to answer.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna.
Sorry, can I ask just one very quick question, because I know you won't be here tomorrow. In terms of the donor sites,
Yeah.
i.e. Ireland, we're donating the After School Flag, what do you see their role being from this point on in supporting the pre-implementation and implementation stage? Is there anything specific that we need to be made aware of in terms of our input and requirements in the coming months?
We have been discussing this with the coordinators to try to give some specific recommendations to the donors. I would say that if you have some kind of these techniques, not techniques, or this scope definition, or if you have a SWOT analysis performed during the active flag planning or whatever, or if you have, for example, here, implementers will need to define actions to implement that will facilitate the implementation of the good practice.
She is here. This is what Anna looks like. Don't be afraid to go and ask her some questions about the next steps, because there's nothing like face to face to have conversations about these issues in